The Senate's debate on President Biden's $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief plan was delayed on Thursday. Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin led an effort by Republicans to delay passing the bill. He demanded the legislation's entire 628 pages be read out loud before debate could begin. Earlier in the day, Vice President Kamala Harris cast the tie-breaking vote to move the plan forward in the evenly divided Senate. The bill is expected to eventually pass. Democrats are pushing to have final legislation on the president's desk before federal benefits expire for millions of Americans on March 14th. Nikole Killion joins me now from Capitol Hill. She's a CBS News congressional correspondent. Nikole, Republicans are trying to delay passing the relief plan. What are their issues with the bill?
Well, there are a lot of issues that they have with the bill, but perhaps one of the biggest gripes is that they feel that this has not been a very bipartisan process. And so, they point to the fact that President Biden said at the outset that he wants to take this bipartisan approach, and a number of GOP lawmakers went to the White House and tried to, in their view, put forth a good faith effort. But at the end of the day, they feel like they got X'd out of the process, and the Democrats move forward with what they feel is a very partisan bill. Democrats, on the other hand, argue that the relief is urgent and needs to get to Americans as quickly as possible. And so they want to minimize any potential, hang-ups. They don't want this to drag out for months and months. And so they want to move expeditiously on this. The president does as well. So that's primarily why they've been at odds. There are other sticking points, including the price tag. Many Republicans feel the $1.9 trillion price tag is too much. They feel that, there's still money that exists from previous COVID relief packages that could be used towards some of these priorities. And also they feel like a lot of non-COVID related provisions got into the bill, although some have since been stripped out. So those have been some of the concerns from Republicans.
So, Nikole, let's talk about timing. Senator Johnson is delaying it by having the entire bill read out loud. What does this actually accomplish? Is this just his way of objecting to the fact that it is most likely going to pass based on party lines? And will this delay actually affect Americans who are waiting to receive relief?
Well, again, certainly if Senate Democrats had their way, they'd like to move more quickly on this and get this done before the end of the week. But because of some of these roadblocks and procedural tactics, it's more likely that a vote would come sometime over the weekend. And that timing is sensitive because, as you point out, those unemployment benefits expire in just over a week. So they don't have too much time to fiddle with. But look, in terms of Senator Ron Johnson, we've seen this before from both sides of the aisle. When they can throw roadblocks in the way of legislation, sometimes they will. And that is, in essence, what Senator Johnson is doing. I mean, this process could take up to 10 hours. And then even after that, if you take that aside, just the process of how this will play out, we expect up to 20 hours of debate. And then you've got both parties expected to introduce amendments. And that will also be a very lengthy process. Sometimes it's known here around Capitol Hill as voterama. We saw that happen a couple of weeks ago, where they just kind of introduce amendment after amendment after amendment. And so things like that could stretch out the process as well. So again, even with all of that, we expect this process to play out over the next couple of days. And like I said, Democrats hope they can get this cleared by the weekend.
Yeah, you're entirely right, Nikole. We see this from both sides, and I think it's part of what frustrates people, seeing those political antics in many ways. So let's talk about the substance. Can you remind our viewers, what are some of the key points of this bill?
Well, I think probably the point that most Americans tend to care about are those checks. When are they coming? When will they be in the mail? And so we do know that most individuals will receive about $1,400 in direct payments. And again, this will depend on a person's income. This will be targeted mostly to those making under $80,000 a year and $160,000 a year for couples. The other key part of this bill are those unemployment benefits we discussed. just $400 a week. And the latest language in the bill now extends those benefits through the end of August. Ideally, the president wanted to do that through September because, as you know, typically Congress is out in August. But as of now, if this bill passes, they would just go through August. But keep in mind that some Republicans and even moderate Democrats were pushing to lower that weekly payment to $300 a week. So they were able to keep $400 in. There's also funding for schools to help reopen schools. There's additional funding for vaccine distribution, money for state and local governments. So there are a number of other ways in which this money will be allocated.
Hey, Nikole, before we let you go, the House also passed a sweeping voting rights and ethics bill on Wednesday. Can you tell us very quickly what it aims to accomplish?
Well, this basically is a major overhaul of the elections process and the electoral system as we know it. And this is something the Democrats have been pushing for some time. They introduced it in the last Congress as well. But some of the changes, their aim is to expand voting access. And so they want to do that in a number of ways by expanding early voting and, making same-day registration easier. This bill also curbs partisan gerrymandering and has a number of enhancements to election security. And what's interesting about this is it kind of comes at a time where a number of states have introduced bills to restrict voter access. Probably the most recent example is in the state of Georgia. But, across more than 40 states, some 250 bills have been introduced to restrict voting access. So there definitely is a tug of war going on right now. Democrats, of course, as I mentioned, argue that this is to expand voting access, whereas Republicans do feel this is stepping on the toes of states, which typically run the elections process.
A tug of war that will become very important come midterm elections. All right, Nikole, thank you.
Absolutely.